Hi, folks. Ladies, how many of you consider yourself frail flowers? Well, I've got a nice flower here, but I suggest considering yourself a frail flower might not be a good idea. It seems to be kind of the Victorian, well, that's what you're going to be. Either you're going to be upper middle class and up and be a frail flower, or lower middle class and down and be a drudge. Either way, you are to be subservient to males. Let's talk about that. Now then, because we have, for that woman on the pedestal and such, the institution in that Victorian world of this bit of leisure. People had money to hire more servants and such as that. Money was coming in from India and various international exploitations. Just before this, woman was going to be busier by and large, regardless of class. Working farm wife, that's obvious. Wife of a tradesman, likewise hard at work, always. For upper class women, keeping the household was a more, well, physically vigorous occupation with some sewing tossed in than it might later be. But with this Victorian period, with the English prosperity that provided an atmosphere where there might be less work for the privileged, well, men who had an income or what have you found something useful or not, often not, oh well, such it is, to do with their time. Their friendships would be with other males, and they and their group, they would be clubbing and gambling at night and off shooting birds in the available woods. They seem to have a thing with shooting birds, at least if you read Victorian fiction during the day. Sex lives in terms of pleasure. Those well off and stable with mistresses. Those less stable, prostitutes, heavy use of prostitutes. So many. We'll talk about that when I do the other little lecture out loud. As for women, they kept the hearth and home, did not work outside the home, except that a wife of a tradesman, hey, she was partner, part and parcel to everything going with that little shop. So that's different. When we get on down in the social structure, it's sort of desirable to scrape together enough money not to starve to death. So we have poor women vigorously working at millinery and such as that. And you get the rural world, farm wives and all that. But our upper middle class, woman on the pedestal, had servants, all of these things. Also, while she socialized, this would tend, she should not have serious opinions, very definitely not. Her friends would be others of other women of the same social class, and appropriate, that is folks of genteel background who were in poverty and could be hired as companions to deal with the emptiness of such times. So, gender separated world, power all with the men. As Mary Wollstonecraft put it, she responded back at the beginning of our time period, 1792, Vindication of the Rights of Woman, that men, she singled out John Milton, singled out French philosopher Rousseau, and a couple other people. We'll just care about her response to Milton right here because that's so clear and obvious and easy. Because Milton tells us woman was formed for sweet, attractive grace, and Wollstonecraft cringed. Women are not children. They can develop their judgment, just as capable of intellectual development as men, and such. But we step from the Romantic period, we're not moving forward. We're stepping into the Victorian period, into conformity. Women should know their place, their gender place, and social place. The next lecture is sexual place, but that's later here. First, we want this part. Most Victorian fiction pretty much carries that notion. William Makepeace Thackeray's Becky Sharp in Vanity Fair. Oh, she's an ambitious woman. She wants to rise above her class, and Thackeray cynically has her coming to a deserved bad end. Deserved for a female. You can't go doing that. Bronte sisters, oh, you've got push in them, reflecting their own poverty and hard lives. Their protagonists are always pushing against the impossible social structure, gender structure, and other elements, economic, you name it. Rules confine. But an awful lot of Victorian fiction treats women as secondary figures and threatens them with consequences for breaking the rules. They're very heavy in stereotypes. Now, I would tell you and assert that Charles Dickens is very much an exception, but not for any notions regarding female independence. Rather, he is an exception because Charles Dickens draws or attempts to draw women the same way that he attempts to draw men, as people. He has that sense. So we aren't getting a notion of equality. Rather, some of his female characters, particularly on down on the class scale, although a few higher, any of them confronting real adversity or being imperfect, are complete figures. Some of them, oh, pretty, nasty, thoroughly, so petty, all of these things. Others, good, or delightful, or harmlessly eccentric and such, and we run the gamut with the imperfections humanizing the better characters and such. He writes about all of his female characters with a sense of empathy, even villainous Madame Defarge. Oh, this hideous figure from the French Revolution in A Tale of Two Cities. Guess what? She is justified in her attitude toward all the nobility and such. It doesn't work. It's lethal and all like. You can't go around murdering the whole rest of the world. It's just not a good thing to do, folks. But that doesn't mean some people don't have reasons for wanting to. And you get that out of Dickens. You get negatives with some of his, that is, literary negatives, the oh shit moments regarding some of his positive characters. If his Esther Summerson in Bleak House was not possessed of that occasional pointed satiric or sarcastic wit, you would find her just impossible to put up with. And Lucy Manette, oh, she's just a distant shining sun in A Tale of Two Cities. She's not human, she's perfect. Now, this won't do, but we'll give Dickens a lot of credit that we won't give to a lot of other people. George Eliot, heavens, woman, intellectual, writer of Victorian fiction, and does her fiction follow the stereotype and pattern? It's almost a model for it. Why? Goodness, personal life defied all of these limits. She was an accomplished scholar in her own right. Her lover she lived with for many years, not her husband, rejected marriage. She was a follower of radical empiricist French philosopher Auguste Comte, the founder of sociology. Yes, he predates Durkheim, so from a historian's perspective, excuse me, from an historian's perspective, we'll call him the founder rather than Durkheim, as you folks in the field of sociology generally do. So if you're in that field or history, look him up and you'll see why I have a justifiable claim, as well as why you sociologists do talk so much about Durkheim. But that's quite all right. Now, at any rate, follower of him, and he was a radical empiricist, adamant atheist. She was likewise, and a student of social structure, with that word structure in there very heavily. Not a reformer, not Eliot. And here we have this personal radical, and then in her behavior politically, and particularly in her novels, Eliot, elitist. She was an opponent of the increased British voter franchise. Yes, Britain gave more people the vote progressively through the 19th century. Tremendous. It was a revolution in Britain. And Eliot didn't like it. She treated this post-Napoleonic War England as kind of an ideal society. The rural versions wrote about stable rural culture, and the world of Adam Bede or Middlemarch was supposed to be something ideal and delightful. She advocated religious belief. Hey, she's an adamant atheist? Yes, but this kind of atheism, this is only for those who know. This is only for the intelligentsia. Hey, middle class people, lower class people, they need to believe, not too fervent about it, but they need to believe, otherwise they won't behave. Ah, dear. And women? Well, they should not challenge the norms, or at least most of them shouldn't. We'll see this as we look at our Middlemarch excerpt. Celia, the younger sister, she behaves as a woman should, and she's going to end up married to Sir James, and this is the way society is supposed to work, and this promotes stability and is a good thing. Other folks in the novel, some portions that we aren't going to look at all, Mary Garth marries and stabilizes and reforms Fred Vincy, and this is good, and she can do this. Rosamond Vincy, social climber, she marries a man who she thinks is going far in the world, and she ruins him financially, keeps him from going far. No further than London, folks, which he flees to, and such. But then Dorothea, our protagonist, dear Dodo, intellectually capable, ambitious, and lacking in that kind of intellectual background that Eliot has, so we've got this picture. She is our centerpiece, probably the most prominent figure in Middlemarch. It's a community, so we've got complexity in that plot, but she's our central figure, and what happens? Lots of frustration because she is too smart for where she is. And Eliot doesn't suggest changing the world with this. She gives us a sense we care about Dorothea, but she's stuck with everything she is, and that's the way it runs. Very frustrating life, a hard one. She is true to herself, and we get that far, but it's a hard road. Adam Bede, the excerpts we're looking at, we aren't going to see much of Diana Morris in our excerpts, but she begins, the drawing of her by Eliot, she's highly independent, and she ends up quite proper wife to the title character at the end of the novel. What we are looking at, Hetty Sorrel, and we'll talk much more about her in the next my next little lecture thing, because she is going to come to sexual ruin, and we'll talk about Victorian conventions on that. But Hetty is everything wrong with a young woman. She wants to rise above her place. go further than she should with social class. She likes pretty things. Hey, lower class women are not supposed to care about pretty things. They're supposed to care about hard work and responsibility and stuff like that. Hetty's lazy and wants to have fun and comes to a bad end that seems deserved by Eliot's standards. So this mainstream Victorian novel, Dickens very much an exception on that, but for so many, a conservative medium. Jane Austen from our beginning. What's the end in Jane Austen? What happens? Well, you get married. Yes, love, marriage within the social structure. Bronte sisters, their novels, their gothic bodice rippers, rake against the norm, but that raking is a very personal one, not a social one. They aren't going to change the world. Dickens would like to have changed the world, very much so, but he did not have any social itinerary or means. Rather, his notion of how to change the world would be people behaving better toward each other. It shows up throughout his fiction. It's nice and true, but yes. Let's see. Dr. Claggett explained Dickens with the words, I understand. Oh, Dickens thinks women should bake muffins. Uh, Probably accurate. That's the words that I got from a previous student, and I think that that probably fits in, despite the positive impression I will give you of Dickens, or I think that I am. Eliot here, her fiction, almost the epitome of that conservative glorification of rural England, hostile to anybody, and especially to women, who press too hard against the rules. You know your place, you live it. Victorian women, the good ones, for the most part, know their place. Sigh. Shit. Sigh.